Morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's the latest agency management training for the PHMIS version 4.0 release. We're going to cover information that goes along with being an agency manager, agency management team within the HMIS system. This class will cover major agency components, things about agency component setup, agency user management. It is going to cover a lot of the same things that we've seen in the last agency manager training, but it will have a big new section, which is basically for the residential programs. It'll have a large section on the housing inventory setup. Includes configuration, maintenance. I think it's a pretty neat feature that we've released in the system. Then we'll cover some client management tools that you guys have. We have a new one, data export, allows you to export data out of the system. A couple of housekeeping notes. We're going to have 2 breaks during the training. It's about 95 slides, so we're probably going to keep you here probably about 2.5 hours. During those breaks, we'll go ahead and have a question and answer session. Hopefully you guys are familiar with your WebEx toolbar. There's basically 2 ways to ask a question. We're going to keep everybody muted. It's a really big class, so we don't have any background noise. If you want to go ahead and ask a verbal question, just go ahead and raise your hand on your toolbar. We'll go ahead and unmute you. You can go ahead and ask it at that time. Also, there's a little question and answer utility. It's a little box, got a little question mark on it. Go ahead and type that in at any time or during the breaks. We'll go ahead and try to get that answered for you. One note with that, if you do mind, it's got a bunch of selections to who you can send the question to. Please select at least host or host and presenters, because if you just send it to the presenter, that's basically going to be sent to me, and I'm kind of busy doing the training, so it might not get answered as fast as you would like. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started. A couple of housekeeping notes, kind of go over these every training just to make sure everybody's aware. HUD data collection rules. Pretty much any HUD-funded programs required to use HMIS. The HMIS system does support data collection for victims of domestic violence. However, any victim service provider, as defined by VAWA, is still prohibited from entering client data into the PHMIS system per applicable federal laws. And we'll have just a little a point on the domestic violence stuff later. Here's the basic class agenda. Pretty much agency manager, user management stuff. Then we'll take a break, come back, and deal with the big housing inventory setup, maintenance kind of section. Then we'll have some high points from the previous 2 trainings we've had, the core and supplemental. Make sure everybody's on the same page, go over the big points. Then finish up with agency manager tools. All right, we'll go into the first section. Each agency consists of 3 basic components within the system, include the agency and all the associated programs and sites. Agencies are always created by DCED staff. The program and site setup can be controlled by the individual organizations in HMIS. Programs are the actual entities where the individual clients are enrolled into and receive services, while sites, make sure everybody understands, sites are basic locations. They're no longer any kind of bucket to put clients in. It's basically a location where your program is administered. Make sure everybody understands that distinction. As you can see here is basically the gold action menu. It's changed a little bit, but for our existing users, most of the same features were there. Agency managers have the ability to search for, look up existing site, agency, and program records in the search for record area. They also have, like I said before, have the ability to create new sites and programs within the create a new record, as well as agency programs and site profiles can also be located on your start page. For regular users, it's just there for informational purposes. For agency managers, it's actually hyperlinked, so you can click on it and actually load that profile. Here's basically the lead agency configuration. This is the agency profile that we create for new agencies. A lot of the information we need to gather from you basically contains name, address information. It also contains a decent amount of information about the organization. It's got grids for, the programs that it administers, the site locations from where those programs are administered, and those are all hyperlinked, so you can just click on them, and it'll immediately load that program. It's a nice kind of little navigation tool. As you see there, we've also added a referral tool, accepting referral by program type tool, and we'll talk about that briefly at the end of this section. Site location, basically when you create a new site, again, it's a location where your program is administered. Contains things like, you got to associate it to your agency, geocode, which is a 6-digit code provided by HUD, site type and housing type. Site type basically tells what kind of services it offers, while the housing type basically tells it's more of like a physical characteristics for that specific site. Whether it's apartments or barracks, or if it's if it's a non-residential service program, you select that as well. And then it has other housekeeping things like basic address, contact, phone number, email information. As you see here, for every site, it also has kind of informational grids on it. It basically shows all the programs that are offered at that location. As well as you can see here, here's basically the new inventory. You can find it in a couple places in the system. One is on your start page, but anytime you load it on your start page, it'll automatically go to the review screen, no matter if it's configured or not. When we actually talk about the housing inventory, we actually recommend going through your sites because it's got some smart logic that if you haven't touched it before, it'll take you to the proper setup screen to where you need to begin. And it basically shows the statuses, inventory name, which can be renamed as well, so it's a lot of good information there. Now we're going to go into the program setup. Since clients are directly enrolled in the programs, these are the entities that are used to track these clients and services that they have been provided. Pretty much everything that's reported in APR-style reports are all reported on a per-program basis. Programs need to be defined by their program type. It's kind of one of the most important designations for each program, and it kind of tells an overall picture story of what service is being provided. It could be emergency shelter, permanent supportive housing, etc. And each distinct program type that you serve, so if you serve like a shelter and also have some kind of supportive service, you can't have just one program type and throw all the clients in there. Each distinctive program type must have a distinctively and independently configured program, and you need to put those clients into those specific programs. This is the basic program profile. Contains elements such as the name, COC code. When you're doing the name, we do ask that you do something fairly distinctive and descriptive. Just don't put like shelter or permanent supportive housing, because to you, that might be the only one in your agency, but when administrators and DCDs looking at it, there could be, 18 different programs called emergency shelter. So we do ask that you put things like your agency name in it and a county, something that's a little more descriptive of where it is. COC code's basically a drop-down of what COC you're in. Then you got your program type, agency that you attach, as well as configuration type, ad site, as well as the target populations, and we'll kind of go over each of those. One note about the configuration type, there's basically 3 settings, and it kind of describes the number of physical buildings the program is administered from. Either have single site, single building, single site, multiple buildings, or multiple sites. And usually that kind of, the service only, it's probably a single administrative building, but if it's more of a residential, could be a scattered site, you have those choices to best describe how your program is laid out. This is the program type code. It's basically available in the drop-down menu, and it basically, the system has the above program types. Most of them are HUD-defined. We have added some other ones for VA-funded programs such as VASH and GPD, as well as the SSBF. We've got a couple agencies coming online with that. And then we've also added PASS and ESG in there for some funding sources as well. So you need to make sure that you assign the right program type code when you're creating a program, and also checking over your existing ones, making sure they're correct. Now, just a quick note about the Emergency Solutions Grant that's coming out. Like I said before, we have the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG program type, in the system. That was currently developed and released only for the 2011 second allotment rollout, which just includes the homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing activities. We know that the full ESG, the 2012 rollout is around the corner, but we still are awaiting better guidance from HUD on the proper data collection methods. once we become aware of the proper data collection guidelines, we will let everyone know. It's not something that we're forgetting about. We're just waiting for better guidance. So please, if you have emergency solution grant with the new rollout with like emergency shelter or outreach activities, please wait a little bit for our guidance. Okay, with the program setup, of course, you need to associate it to the proper agency. Most users in the system are only assigned to a single agency, so that'll pretty much probably be defaulted for you. Couple housekeeping notes here. As you can see, once the program is created, this is for the sites as well, the agency pretty much gets locked down. We don't want any changing of agencies because that can kind of mess up client data down the line. As well, because of the implementation of the new house program rules like enrollments and exits, especially with the assessment loops where, you know, one program requires this, one program doesn't. We have actually, anytime you have clients enrolled in the program, as well as if you have inventory configured, meaning you have any, you know, it's not empty, you even have one bed, you know, created, we do lock out this program type code. Now, if at any time, you know, you realize there's a mistake or something happens, you can contact the PHMIS Help Desk, talk to myself or Steve, and we can work with you. We do have some overrides here that can correct that problem, but we just want to have some oversight with it so to make sure that your client data isn't affected by accidentally switching either of these two settings. Site location. Each program will need to select at least one of their agency sites, locations where the program will be offered or administered. Every program needs to be administered somewhere. Need to pick at least one site. You do not need to create a specific site for every program. That was kind of the old way to do it in the past years and everything. That is not necessary. If you're an agency that basically has one central administrative office that you serve all, you know, 2, 3, or 4 of your programs out of, there's no need to create a separate site, and we actually do not want you to. When you create your sites, we want them to be very real world and very physically, you know, this is where it is location-wise. And you can attach that same site to every single program that you have if that's how it is set up in the real world. Now, once you select your agency, you basically select from the drop-down. It has all the sites that you've configured in the agency. You basically just click the Add button, and that's pretty much it. Now, there are some situations, maybe some residential situations or even some outreach situations where you could even have multiple sites that actually administer the same program. And you want to, when you're collecting client data and collecting enrollments, you want to throw them into the same program bucket. The system allows that as well. Just add another, you know, repeat the process and add the second site to it. Now, when you are enrolling clients into the program, you will need to make sure that you are aware or cognizant of where you're serving them so that you do select the right site so it gets tracked at the right location. Now, if you do have primary sites, you will need to pick a primary one. The system will automatically default the first one. So if you just want to change it, basically click the next box. The system will basically move that checkbox. Target population A, record the appropriate target population served by the system. This is not required, but it is highly recommended. And it basically provides one of 11 different target populations that you may specifically serve. And the kind of rule of thumb is for a program to have a specific target population is 3/4 of the clients you serve must meet that specific definition. So if you serve less than 75% of the same clients, we do ask that you select kind of the response 11, which is SMF plus HC, which is basically the default all of the above. Target population B, this is a required field and must be set up before creating a new program. And it's more of a subpopulation, and it basically has one of 3 different choices. You've got domestic violence victims, which since DV, VAWA specific programs can't be in the system, that's probably not one that's going to be ever chosen. There's VET for veterans, HIV for persons with HIV or AIDS, or NA, which is not applicable. The same rule applies. 75% of your clients must meet this subpopulation for you to select it. And with this, if it doesn't meet either of these three, you have to select NA for not applicable. You can't leave this one blank. All right, just a couple housekeeping notes about referral setup. This is more kind of talking briefly about this because kind of sets up the information we're talking about on the next slide. System is implemented a couple agency-level referral features to increase the amount of successful referrals in this initial release. Something created called collaborative referral groups. Basically, we handle that. DCD does all the configuration, basically allows the setup of local and regional organizations to kind of group together when they know, hey, I'm going to work with these three agencies. We're going to refer to them 75% of the time. That's basically what it is for. Now, we understand the process is likely going to take time to implement as COCs, regional organizations talk to each other, get the proper paperwork in place before these referral-based collaboratives start working. But like I said, we just want to make sure everybody's aware that this feature is in the system, whether it's used now or later, it is there. Now, the other setup feature that we have is located directly on the agency profile, and this one is controllable or configurable by agency management. And it basically contains what we call an accepting referrals by program type feature, and this is, again, another option to try to provide users with the best match possible when sending out referrals, try to lessen the amount of rejected or ignored referrals. What it basically does is it looks at all the programs you have, and every unique program type you have configured or you have at your agency will basically be listed down here. This specific agency has shelter services only, permanent supportive housing, as well as ESG programs. Now, you may have 8 programs and a bunch of different that share the same program type. Each program type is only going to be shown once. Now, you basically have 3 settings, and what this basically does is within the system, it basically says what agencies can send you what type of referrals. And since on the referrals you basically choose what program type, to kind of denote this, the client's needs, this is basically a way for you to say, hey, I want to accept referrals for this program type. We can handle it, but I don't want to accept referrals. I don't even want them even sent to me because we can't handle them or we don't want to accept them from this program type. And there's basically 3 different settings. There's all, which basically means I'll take a referral with this type from anybody in the whole system. Collaborating, which basically means I'm only going to take referrals from people within my own collaborative group. And then there's none, which means that, we're not going to support or take referrals from anybody in the system. And basically there's just a little drop down and you basically select each program type. You hit save on the agency profile, and that's pretty much it.
Hey guys, this is Dan Fox. I just wanted to jump in here quickly and say that initially when we designed this, the idea was, as Brian was saying, to be as flexible as possible and really give each agency the ability to assist in the collaborative process by saying right up front what they will and will not accept referrals for. However, this is something that could potentially be tweaked as time goes on, depending on your COC needs. Some COCs already are discussing requiring agencies to accept referrals. Some COCs, specifically smaller COCs that might not work for, are talking about being more flexible, but typically the COCs that have more of a central intake need to have a lot of control over that process. So this is something that we hope to keep flexible, but this ultimately is not up to me or the help desk. So I just wanted to give you a heads up down the road. This, could be overridden by your local policies.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And just one other note that when you're going into this the first time or a new program type's added, it always defaults to all. So just want to make sure everybody's aware that if you add a new program type or change something, that once things get rolling and depending, like Dan said, of the overrides, what control you have, everything defaults to except all. Okay, now we're going to go to the user account maintenance. Along with control of your individual components like agency, sites, programs, inventory that we're going to show you, you also have control over all the individual users to some extent within your agency. Now we're going to cover briefly, we really haven't talked about the user registration process that much. We're going to have a couple slide on it just to make sure everybody's aware of the process there. We do have, I think, pretty good step-by-step guides for both the new user registration and any password reset problems that you're having. They are currently on the newpa.com website. Even with the new release, nothing has changed in this manner, so registration, we didn't touch that or the password stuff, so it's pretty much going to remain the same. After that, we're going to go into the whole user account maintenance, basically show you, what features you have, user lookups, profile information, flexibility you can set with your privilege levels, which basically control what kind of actions users can do in the system. And then finally, we'll finish up with agency permissions. Every user in the system needs to be assigned specific program site assignments that they are going to administer. We'll go over that whole process and kind of theory and thought process behind all that. Now, usually we kind of, I guess, glaze over the new user registration, but we kind of wanted to explain this to everybody while we had everybody here for the new release training. Want to let everybody know that the new user registration process does involve multiple steps. It requires both a paperwork and a system interaction process. It's not something that the help desk can just whip up real fast. Unfortunately, with the nature of the system, it collects a lot of client data, a lot of sensitive data. There's a lot of processes that we need to do before we let someone in. So if you're an agency manager, you have a new user, you can't, a lot of times, sometimes we just get an email and just says, hey, I'm Bill, send me an account, send me my password or something. It doesn't really work that way. It pretty much takes not only the user, the help desk, but it also takes agency management help to basically get this guy in the system. Now, there's two basic processes. The first is the paperwork part, where every user must sign what we call a system user agreement. Basically says, hey, I've been trained. I'm going to abide by the laws, the rules, privacy rules of the system, as well as they must be authorized to access the system for that organization. They basically, as an agency, you need to say, hey, yeah, this guy's with us. We want him in our agency, and he's allowed to access our data. And we call that a user authorization form. And that actually needs to be filled out by an agency manager or an executive director, somebody in the management of that agency. Now, once we do receive that paperwork signed, completed, then you can go on to the next step where the user will actually need to create their own account. We don't control any of that. It's actually, fortunately, it's a third-party system, PA PowerPort, PA Login. It's got a couple different names that actually handles our accounts and passwords. So we have no ability to change passwords or do anything like that. So through the login screen, they basically need to create their own username and a unique email address. Now, once those two steps are done, and we basically have the completed paperwork in our hand, as well as notification that you've created an account. If you create an account and don't let us know, we pretty much don't know the next steps done. That's when we can go in, activate the account, and then you can log in, create your new password. Just wanted to bring this up that it is a multi-step process, because a lot of times we have people, send us an email, and then we give them the steps, and we just don't hear back from them. And then 2 months later, we kind of get a call and saying, hey, I never heard anything back from you. So we just want to make sure everybody understands the process.
I also want to jump in and say something here. Brian mentioned quickly, it's something that's always mentioned, but we haven't necessarily enforced too well in the past. He mentioned with the system user agreement language has been changed. All of our legal documents have been changed and will be being released with the new system on the 12th. But the system user agreement specifically references training. We have to move to a stance where we will not allow any user access to the system without being trained first. So training and these forms need to happen first. So as Brian said, it's not going to be, just an overnight process.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Okay, now we're going to go into, now all the features here are assuming that, okay, all the prerequisites are done in the system. The user has an active registered account in the system. Agency managers can control all of their what we call privilege levels as well as site program and site access through what we call individual user profiles. Every user has their own profile, and they can view their own profile as well. Basically, managers can click on a user lookup, and depending on the size of your agency, how many users you have, you can search for the name, first name, last name, hit search, it'll bring it up. A lot of times, if it's a smaller agency, you can just do a blank search, and it'll basically give you all your users that you have access to. And by clicking on them, it basically provides basic information about that user, their name, their username, email address, what agency they're attached to, that sort of thing. A couple other pieces of information it shows. It always shows whether the user is currently logged in or not, as well as the last login date. So you can kind of track who's been logging in and who has not been logging in. So that's how you get to user profiles. Now, with the privilege levels basically, each user has their own account privileges that allow a user to perform specific actions within the system. Now, with these privilege levels, it's one of those things where it's a building process. If someone has managed programs, that means they have login and managed clients. It's one of those things that builds upon each other. And there is 6 main privilege levels in the system. Most of everybody in the system is probably only going to be privy to those 5. HMIS leaves a very special one that only a few people have. Login's pretty straightforward. That allows someone to log in. Now, manage clients, that basically gives people the ability to pretty much manage clients, create households, create clients, enroll them in the programs, and that's the pretty standard feature or standard privilege level for all case managers, intake workers. That's what you want to set it to. Now, the next 3 basically are some managing features on kind of an escalating scale. Typically, agency managers, the top of the line, basically have the manage agency. And you have control over users, sites, programs, agencies, everything. Now, the managed programs and users are kind of escalating. If you want someone that has, access to your programs, you can create or look at existing just programs. That's what we call a managed program. Now, a managed user is almost what we call like an assistant manager. Assistant manager basically has access over programs as well as users, so they are able to go in and set user accounts and everything like that. Now, typically within a agency, no matter how big or small it is, we only allow there to be a single agency manager per agency. We want kind of like a nice hierarchical structure. Now, there can be a couple assistant managers, and more as the pyramid goes down, but we really are looking to have a single person be the HMIS manager of that agency. When you are looking at users and doing the user lookup for the account privileges, you can only find and locate users that are below your level. So if you're an agency manager, you're going to be able to look up and edit anybody that's managed users and below. Same thing, on the way down. Now, you're not allowed to see anybody of your same privilege level. It's one of those cascading things of what the system allows users to see and access within the system. This is kind of the main section within the system, and that's one of the things that we do set up initially within the user authorization guide, that the agency kind of says, hey, I want this guy in my agency, as well as you denote what their privilege level is, and we set that up by default when we activate their account, and it does allow a little bit of flexibility for agency managers, however. The next thing that we want to talk about is user access permissions. Now, these are basically individual permissions to what we call site and program combinations. When a person is assigned to an agency, they basically have access to all the client data, client profiles, the assessments that are out there. They can create new clients. However, from a program side of the system, we actually have a second level of security that basically, since there's one client profile per agency, you could have multiple different users administering off the same profile, but dealing with different programs. To not allow everyone into everybody else's programs, we kind of set up this access permission based on both a program and a site permission. So you could have a user in your system that just deals with your SSO program, another user in your position in your organization that just deals with emergency shelter programs. This is where you basically set that up, and we know basically this is completely under the control of agency management. So when you create a new user or a new user's registered, or even you create a new program in the system, this information isn't set up by default. And Steve and I, the help desk, DCD, we try to not get involved. We'll help you through the process, but we can't set up these permissions since they're your users. Couple notes, like if you are an agency manager or an HMIS lead, though, any agency that you're associated to, you will have what we call implied access. So each program and site doesn't need to be specifically assigned to you. Since you're the manager, you basically have across-the-board stuff. But like I said, with users, anything below agency managers, for them to enroll clients, view those records, they need to be specifically assigned to their user profile. And we're going to kind of quickly go over the process for doing that. Within the first thing you need to select, it's kind of like you select a program first, and then you attach a site that program is administered at. It's a kind of a combination thing. You can't have just a program permission, or you just can't have a site permission. It needs to be a combination. You basically have a drop down of all the programs that are basically within your agency. Basically, you just click on the specific program, you hit the add button, and it'll basically add it to that client. Now, you need to make sure that it's a two-step process. So once you do that, the system will basically prompt you with a little message to make sure you understand it. Say, hey, before you save this program, you also need to give them permission to a site that offers that program. So you'll go down. It's pretty intelligent and clever of how it kind of walks you through the process. It kind of won't let you make a mistake. Within the site list directly underneath, so I basically said, hey, I want this user to have our transitional program. That's what he administers. Now you need to go down and select the site at which he's going to administer that program. So basically you select it again, you hit the plus sign again, and that will complete the permission process. And you basically can do that over and over again, for as many programs or sites, programs and sites that the user actually needs to administer in the agency. It could be one, could be two, could be all of them if they have, if they have their fingers in all your agency's programs. Now, a couple notes, since we kind of talked about programs can have multiple sites. Now, we kind of did this functionality so that you can actually restrict it by location. A user may provide services to a program, but only at this specific location. However, if this user may travel between the locations, or you want to let them data collect at all multiple sites, you will need to do a second step where you go into the actual site itself, and you'll basically pick the drop-downs, and it's basically going to show all the programs that, and the little asterisks basically show which programs the client has, and you'll basically show the sites under it. As you can see, this homeless shelter program is actually offered at 2 sites. So then if they actually do need permissions at both of those locations, you basically just do the same thing. You click on it, you hit the plus button, it's basically added. All these permissions are added in real time. There's no need to hit save afterward. It automatically saves it once you hit the plus button. Now, conversely, it's pretty much the same. It's easy to remove those programs. Say a user has left your agency and you want to kind of strip them of their permissions, or maybe they're switching programs, they're going from one program to another. All you have to do is come into the program, you click the button, you hit the minus sign, and the program, as well as any sites that are associated to it, will be automatically removed. So it's a pretty easy plus kind of minus situation of assigning permissions to users. One last thing before we take a break is just the contact on the user profile. We are adding a new contact email address directly below the account email address. One of the main reasons we're doing that is at certain times when you register for your accounts, because like we said, we use that third-party system, it may already be in there, so you might not be able to register with your, the specific email address you want, so you had to create a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, something you don't register that often or look at that often. So we created this area so you can actually, if your account email is not your the one you want, you can go ahead and type in this basic text area your main email address. And what we do, what we're going to look to do for future trainings, when we send out our training notices and system alerts, we basically pull these email addresses out of the system, and we get a lot of bounce backs, and it doesn't allow you a lot of flexibility for what you want to have on your email list. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this field first. If that one's filled in, that's the one we're going to grab and shoot you the notification that way. However, it is optional. If the correct email address, your primary is your account email, you can leave it blank, and if we see a blank here, we'll just pull your old email address, your regular email address that we have in the system. So just wanted to mention that.